Your German Shepherd freezes over his food bowl the moment you walk toward him. Head drops, body locks, the whole energy in the room shifts, and you back off. You give him space. You think you're being respectful. That retreat was the reward. He didn't learn to be calmer near his bowl. He learned that going rigid makes you disappear. The behaviour worked, and the next time, it needs to work a little less hard before you move. That's not a boundary being respected, that's a system being trained. This is one of at least 5 guarding behaviours German Shepherds run on a regular basis, and most owners are reinforcing every single one without knowing it. Not through neglect, through responses that feel completely reasonable in the moment. The last behaviour on this list is the one owners almost universally call love. It's also the most dangerous one to keep rewarding. The bowl is the best place to start because it's the most legible version of the same mechanic that runs through everything else. When your GSD stiffens over his food, head low, body tight, weight shifted slightly forward, that's not him focusing on eating. That's a threshold test. He's running a specific calculation. How much tension is required to make you back away? If you back away, the calculation resolves. Freeze worked, distance acquired. Behaviorists who study resource guarding describe it as a spectrum, and the freeze sits at the early end of it. Early doesn't mean minor, it means formative. This is the phase where the behavior is still being calibrated. The dog isn't locked in, he's learning what the minimum effective dose looks like. And every time the minimum effective dose works, it gets filed as the answer. What that produces over weeks is a lowering threshold. The behavior doesn't need a full bowl or a legitimate competition to trigger. It just needs the pattern to remain reliable. You approached, the freeze pushed you back, the resource was protected. That sequence repeats, and gradually the freeze starts appearing in situations with less and less logical justification. Over an empty bowl. Over a chew he forgot about an hour ago. Over a corner of the room that doesn't contain anything you'd recognize as worth guarding. The stimulus narrows, the sensitivity increases, the response stays intact. You didn't avoid a conflict, you scheduled the next one. That's the mechanic connecting every behavior in this video. A response that felt reasonable, that taught the dog the wrong thing about which system to trust. At the bowl it's visible because the trigger is concrete and the stakes are obvious. But the same architecture runs in situations where the thing being guarded isn't an object at all, including things your dog never picked up, never consciously chose, never claimed in any way you'd recognize. That version looks so different from the food bowl that most owners never connect the two. But they're running on the same logic, and they respond to the same accidental reinforcement. Your dog is in the doorway, or parked at the top of the stairs, or positioned in the middle of the couch in a way that makes getting past him mildly awkward. He doesn't move, makes eye contact, maybe a low sound, maybe nothing, just complete stillness, and that particular quality of presence that makes you decide it isn't worth the friction. So you step around him, or sit somewhere else, or give a small laugh and let it go. That laugh is a concession. That step around him is a negotiation. And you just lost it. German Shepherds don't map only objects as resources. They map space. A doorway, a stair landing, a couch position that overlooks the room. Those locations carry functional value in the way a GSD processes his environment. They control movement. They control access. They define who passes and who waits. Trainers who work specifically with working breed dogs often flag threshold holding as one of the earliest indicators of spatial resource guarding, precisely because it's so easy to rationalize away. He was comfortable. You didn't want to disturb him. It wasn't serious enough to make into a thing. But there's a real difference between a dog who is genuinely at rest and a dog who is holding a position, and it's visible if you know what to look for. A fully relaxed dog dissolves into the surface, weight soft, attention disengaged, body actually loose. A dog holding a position carries a different quality. Weight slightly forward, attention present, body not quite slack even when it looks like it might be. The posture is active even when the dog is still. Next time he's in the doorway, notice whether he's resting or whether he's installed. It's a different thing. You didn't let him rest. You let him own that spot. And once a spot has been conceded enough times, it defends itself with decreasing effort. The dog doesn't need to escalate because the low-cost version keeps working. That principle, low cost, consistent payoff, behavior strengthens, is the same engine running at the bowl and at every behavior after this. What makes the next one different is that it looks nothing like guarding. It looks like the opposite. Your GSD positions himself between you and a friend who's standing nearby, or leans his full body weight into you while someone else is talking to you, or physically inserts himself when your partner reaches toward you. And the instinct is immediate. He's protective, he's loyal, he loves you. You put a hand on him, tell him he's a good boy, and feel something warm about the whole thing. What you just reinforced is not protectiveness, it's possession. The dog has applied the same resource logic that runs at the bowl and the doorway, only now the resource is you. He has classified you as something to be held, maintained, and defended against encroachment. The body block is how that claim gets managed in real time. Someone moves too close, the position closes the gap. The behavior isn't reading an actual threat and responding to it, it's reading proximity to a claimed resource and controlling it. This is the misread that tends to run the longest uncorrected, because it feels like exactly what an owner would want. Protectiveness is a feature of the breed. Loyalty is a feature of the bond. Both of those are real. But protectiveness and possessiveness produce nearly identical behavior at low intensity. The dog between you and someone else. The dog who shows up whenever a certain kind of interaction starts. And the difference isn't in the behavior itself, it's in the trigger. Protectiveness activates in response to a genuine environmental read. It has an on and an off. Possessiveness activates in response to proximity to the resource, which means it applies to guests, to other dogs near you, to anyone whose presence registers as a variable near something the dog considers his. It doesn't have a clean off. Protectiveness and possessiveness feel identical until one of them bites your friend's dog. Owners who pet the body block, who praise the lean-in, who treat the physical insertion as devotion, they're building that system one rewarded moment at a time, and the downstream expression isn't subtle. Reactivity toward other dogs when you're present, difficulty settling when guests are in the house, the dog who has to position himself whenever you're with other people and can't simply rest while you are. Those aren't separate problems, they're the same reinforced system at higher intensity. This one involved other people and the external environment triggering the response. The next behavior is quieter. It happens inside your home, in completely ordinary circumstances, with nothing obviously wrong, and it's been running daily for most owners without ever being named. Something outside. A person walking past. A car door. A dog barking 2 streets over. Your GSD posts up at the window, barking hard, not stopping. You come in from the other room. Okay, that's enough. Maybe a quick good boy once he settles. You glance out the window for a second and then head back. From your perspective, you redirected it. The good boy was for stopping. From his perspective, the sequence went, bark, owner appears, owner engages and looks at the thing I was barking at, loop complete. The reward was delivered the moment you walked in, before you said a word. The enough, good boy, came after the payoff, not before it. The bark worked before any correction was issued. And a behavior that consistently works doesn't weaken because something happens after the payoff. It strengthens. Attention functions as one of the most significant reinforcers for German Shepherds. Trainers working with the breed consistently note that owner proximity and engagement carry weight that rivals food for many individual dogs. When alert barking reliably produces both, the system that generates the barking gets stronger, and there's a specific and predictable thing that happens over months of that reinforcement. The alert threshold lowers. Things that produced no response 6 months ago now produce a full bark sequence because the system has been confirmed enough times that it runs on smaller inputs. The dog isn't becoming more reactive in some abstract sense. He's running a behavior that has been working on more and more triggers because that's what consistently reinforced behaviors do. You thought you were correcting it. You were confirming it. The impulse to walk in is hard to override because the barking has a quality of urgency that triggers owner engagement almost automatically. But that engagement is part of the reward structure, not separate from it. Every appearance, every glance out the window, every enough spoken from the same room, that's part of the payoff. The behaviour called you. You came. The loop ran. That one is about a behaviour that's obvious while it's happening. You know something is occurring, you're responding to it. The next one runs in moments you'd never think to look at twice. Before any behaviour, before any arousal, before anything surfaces at all. If you're the kind of person who actually watches what your dog is doing instead of just what he's reacting to, this channel was built for you. Vet waiting room, someone new coming into the house. A loud environment your dog doesn't have a map for. Your GSD won't leave your leg, presses close, stays tight, tracks everyone in the room. If someone approaches you, he stiffens, or shifts to cut off the angle, or just hardens in a way that's hard to describe but easy to feel, and you read it as fear, which is partly right, so you do the thing that looks like help. You stroke him, speak low and steady, keep him close, because that's what a scared dog needs. Here's the problem. Two different things are happening simultaneously, and responding to them as one thing addresses only half the picture. The discomfort is real. Your read on that part is accurate, but layered on top of that discomfort is an active behavioural response. The tight proximity to you, the monitoring of who approaches, the management of the space between you and everyone else. That's not only fear seeking comfort, that's a coping strategy with a specific operational output. The dog is uncomfortable, and using access to you plus spatial control as the mechanism to manage that discomfort. Two different signals wrapped in the same moment. Behavioural specialists who work with working breeds observe that German Shepherds tend to anchor strongly to the owner under elevated arousal, and that this anchoring can become a primary stress regulation strategy. That's not inherently a problem. A dog using his owner as a secure base is a normal part of the bond. The problem is what gets reinforced when the dog is anchoring and guarding at the same time. When the full package, press against owner, stiffen at anyone who comes close, control the surrounding space, is consistently met with warmth and closeness, the package gets reinforced together. Not just the fear response, the entire strategy, including the guarding layer. You were trying to help your dog feel safe. You were training your dog that guarding you is how to feel safe. That distinction produces a specific trajectory. A dog whose stress regulation system is built around guarding you doesn't develop more flexible coping responses as he matures. He develops a more entrenched version of the one that's been working. New environments, unfamiliar people, any situation with variables he hasn't mapped. The first move is possessive and controlling, not curious and oriented. And the owner, trying to help, keeps stroking the response that's narrowing the dog's world. That one surfaces when the context is obviously stressful. Elevated arousal, unfamiliar environment, something you can feel even if you don't name it correctly. The last one has none of that. No stress, no trigger, no elevated anything. The most ordinary evening in your own home. That's where it lives, and that's why almost no one catches it. Your dog is across the room, looks completely relaxed, stretched out, breathing steady, might even appear half asleep. Nothing is happening. No tension, no visitors, no particular reason for anything. You're on the couch. Someone else is in the room. Someone shifts and sits closer to you, or gets up and walks near where you're sitting, or reaches across you for something. And your dog, from across the room, lifts his head, watches for a moment, gets up, walks over, and settles himself noticeably closer to you than he was before. You reach down and give him a pat. He's such a sweet dog. He just always wants to be near you. That repositioning was not about affection. Before anyone moved, his eyes were already tracking the spatial relationship between you and everyone else in the room. When the geometry shifted, someone closing the distance to you, someone's trajectory moving too near, the position adjustment followed. Not because he wanted contact, because the distance needed to be managed. That is position maintenance. Passive surveillance guarding operating at near zero arousal with almost no visible signal, running quietly underneath what looks like a completely ordinary evening. German Shepherds are built for environmental monitoring in a way that is genuinely different from most other breeds. It's not a mode they switch on, it's a default processing layer. They are reading the room constantly, mapping positions, tracking movement, registering changes in spatial arrangement. When the thing being monitored is you, that monitoring doesn't require any elevated state to run. It just runs, quietly, in the background, while the dog looks like he's doing nothing at all. The repositioning is the only external output, and it is so consistently read as love, because it looks so much like love, that it almost never gets read as anything else. Every behavior in this video was visible. This one isn't. And it's the one that's been running the longest. Because it never surfaces as a problem behavior, it never gets addressed. While the freeze at the bowl might prompt an owner to think something needs to change, this one never prompts anything except warmth. It prompts a pat. It prompts an invitation. It prompts, "Come here, boy." Every one of those responses deepens the pattern without either party knowing what's actually being built. Months of this accumulate. The dog develops a complete architecture of surveillance and position management around the owner, an architecture the owner experiences as attentiveness, closeness, exceptional loyalty. That's not entirely wrong. The bond is real. The attentiveness is real. But the system underneath it is being shaped by every pat that follows a repositioning, every piece of warmth that confirms the monitoring is working. By the time the overt behaviors appear, the stiffening when someone sits next to you, the reactivity toward dogs in your presence, the anxiety when you leave, the quiet system that produced them has been running undisturbed for a long time. This is what makes it the most important one to understand. Not because it's the most dramatic, it isn't. Because it's the one that's been there the whole time. The issue was never that your German Shepherd guards. Guarding is instinct, it's information. It's part of the system that makes a GSD what he is. The environmental awareness, the resource sensitivity, the deep orientation toward the person he's bonded to. None of that is the problem. The problem is what gets built when that system runs without being read. Every retreat from the bowl taught the freeze that it works. Every step around the doorway taught the held position that it holds. Every good boy after the body block taught possession that it looks like loyalty. Every appearance at the window taught the bark that calling you is reliable. Every stroke during a stress-rigid moment taught guarding that it leads to closeness. Every pat after a repositioning taught surveillance that it feels like love. You weren't failing your dog in any of those moments. You were reading what looked like one thing and responding accordingly. But behind each of those behaviors was a communication about ownership, about threshold, about which system your dog has learned to trust in order to maintain his sense of safety and connection. And now you can read it. That changes what you do next. Not because your dog needs to be corrected, but because the system that's been building quietly in the background doesn't actually serve him. It narrows him. A dog who has to guard to feel safe is a dog who needs the guarding to function. A dog who feels safe without it has something more durable than that. Start with whatever you recognized first. The bowl is the most visible place to begin, but pay attention to the quiet ones too. The repositionings, the eyes tracking across the room, the geometry of where he places himself when other people are near you. That's where the system lives before it ever becomes the behavior you're trying to fix. If this changes how you read your dog, there's more on this channel worth your time.